In this video, we'll be creating this beautiful vintage card I made for my daughter's 40th birthday. She's a musician, so I wanted it to feel like a keepsake without needing fancy art skills. We'll use the majestic guitar dies from Spellbinders BB's Musical Notes. Keep watching to the end where we build the vintage background and pull the whole card together, and I'll show you the stamp set that makes this whole thing so easy to do. All that and more coming up. Hi, welcome to the Upper Craft Room, where we make a mess and create something beautiful out of it. I cut the pieces ahead of time so you didn't have to sit and watch me die cut all these pieces. How boring would that be? Everything's cut and ready to go, so let's get started. I'm just grabbing a scrap sheet of paper and I'm going to start inking up the bass guitar. I'm taking the ink pad straight to the guitar body to get that wood grain look. Not sure if this is actually a bass guitar or if it's electric. Kind of looks like a bass guitar to me, but I'm not a musician. I don't know. Anyway, I'm taking the ink pad straight to the guitar. Gina K Designs pads are felt, so when you swipe them, you get that nice wood grain streak. It looks like a hot mess right now, but trust me, it comes together. Just wait till you see the finished result. I'm trying to deepen the color and get it really dark, but I'm not getting enough ink color from the ink pad to the cardstock. So I bring in my blending brush and I start to blend, but the scrap paper isn't working. So I'm moving right onto the surface. I'm trying to keep the sticky mat clean, but let's be honest, it's picking up ink no matter what, so that's not happening. Now I'm getting the look I want, and these are saturated with ink. So I'm going to set these aside to dry, and I'm bringing in all the little pieces. This set has a lot of intricate parts. I love it because without them, it's more of a flat lay. But these details add so much dimension that the guitar feels real to life. Even if I didn't ink them, I'd still have to cut everything from colored cardstock. Either way, this card's going to take some time to create. So this set is for when you really want to spend time creating something you love. And I love getting inky and that inked up look. My daughter, my son-in-law, my grandson, and my husband are all musicians. When Spellbinders contacted me and asked me if I wanted the opportunity to do this set, I was like, heck yeah. They sent me 4 sets to this collection, and I went to the website and got all the other sets to this collection. I think it was like 4 more because I liked it so much. I'm inking the strings and all the little detailed decorative pieces with Memento Tuxedo Black ink so they stand out against the wood grain. For the circles in the center, I'm using charcoal brown for a softer, warmer contrast. I ink straight from the pad, then use a small blending brush to soften the edge so it doesn't look too harsh. We're just aiming for a clean black detail here and a warm center with a bit of depth. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute and then we'll start gluing. I almost forgot about this part, but I'm using gold ink on the hardware so it pops. I hit the tuning machines on the headstock and the fret pieces with gold, plus a few of those tiny detailed dots. I'm using my old Martha Stewart pad here. You can't get it anymore, and they don't even sell the re-inkers, but it's still juicy. So I also like the Delcata for a pretty gold, and I have Alt News Gold on the way. Plenty of brands make metallics, but today I'm just using what I have. I'm also using charcoal brown again on the headstock this time to keep that color contrast going. Now that the guitar body is dry, I want to deepen the edges. It's looking good to me, but I want the edges darker to give it a soft, shadowy feel. I want it to look a little aged also. That way the guitar will match the vintage background we create next. When I got the majestic guitar set, I instantly pictured vintage. I'm attaching the tuning machines to the headstock with Barely Arts precision glue. I line everything up so it's straight. Now, these small layers, they make a big difference. When the strings go down first and the dots sit on top, you get that tiny step of depth that catches light and separates the hardware from the neck. Because that tiny step creates light and shadow, your eye goes towards the hardware first instead of losing it against the neck. It also adds a bit of realism. Real guitars have layered parts, not a flat face, so the small lift makes the details feel finished and it helps with the vintage look we're going for. Now, as you can see, this guitar is huge. I had to create a 5x7 card because you couldn't create an A2 size card and get this whole guitar on the card. This set was created to build a gift box. I have a video I'll link below to show you exactly how that comes together. Now we're gluing the pieces together, and I want to point out the mistake I'm making right here. I glued the neck to the back of the guitar, and it should have gone on the front. I gave this to my daughter for her 40th birthday, and she didn't say a word. She just said, "You make some really cute cards." So clearly, it didn't bother her. Hindsight's 20/20 though. After checking the guide, I realized the neck should have set on the front, not the back. It still looks great and I was totally fine with it, but you can bet the next time I create this guitar, I'll properly be placing that neck. Now I'm gluing down the string and finishing up the second guitar and putting those rings on. That centerpiece is supposed to be the sound hole and it's part of the bottom of the guitar. When you look inside the guitar, it's hollow and that would represent the sound box. I don't even know if I'm using these words right, but I think that's what it is. Now I'm adding glue to the back of the intricate piece, and it's tricky because there's so many thin lines. I wouldn't recommend this applicator. It's made for wood glue and it shows. More glue soaks up into the brush than lands on the paper. So I ended up using way more glue than I needed just to get those decorative pieces to stick to the cardstock. Now I don't have any clue what this piece is, but it sits on top of the decorative layer and lines up right over those holes. You can see through those holes very easily and place it exactly where it needs to go. And there it is, the guitar is coming together very nicely. And here's my second mistake. I missed the frets the first time. I didn't even know what they were until my husband said, well, those are the frets. He was so right, and of course he would know. So I inked them in gold and started placing them along the neck where they belong. Sometimes you win, and sometimes you learn. Today I learned. Thank goodness I hadn't glued the strings down yet. They're so delicate, and I figured what I had was secure enough. That let me tuck the frets underneath the strings and it worked out great. A few of the frets hung past the edges of the neck, so I just trimmed the ends. That might be true on a real guitar too, but either way, I just gave it a couple quick snips and cleaned it up a little bit. And that wraps it up. We are finished building out the guitar. Now here comes the fun part. I'm pulling out a Tim Holtz mixed media set. He has a bunch of these. This one is Mixed Media 62 and it includes 2 stencils and a few stamps that help you build out that grungy type of background. And it makes the layers, the grungy layers, come together fast. I don't naturally think like a mixed media artist, but I love the look, so this is my shortcut. I found this set on scrapbook.com and fell in love with it. I'm starting with the stencil, and I'm not using the whole pattern, just sections of it, because I want the background to feel layered and a little imperfect. In this stencil, it lines up pretty easily. When I needed more pattern, I just lift and I shifted the stencil, lined it up with a couple of the shapes, and I kept it going. I did that at the end to finish the corner so it didn't look cut off. I'm using the sticky mat to hold down the stencil so it doesn't slide around. And I'm going in with a light hand at first, then I deepen in a few spots so that it looks worn instead of brand new. I'm sure you can tell, but I'm not really a mixed media artist. I just go by what looks good. I work in thirds without thinking about it. I laid the stencil a little off in the opposite corners of the cardstock. I leave some open space, or white space as they call it in the design world. This keeps the eye moving and feels natural. When the guitar goes on, it lands where your eye already wants to go. I love everything about this set, and even though they're smaller stencils, they're a perfect size, and they layer really nicely for that grungy look. I keep it random on purpose. It's simple, it's quick, and it gives me that aged backdrop without overthinking it. Now I'm stamping with the mixed media set. I want the background to support the guitar and not fight for attention with it. The silhouette roses add texture without clutter, and I'm stamping the roses in charcoal brown so the background stays soft and the guitar remains the focus. Charcoal brown is a deeper brown than warm cocoa, which is what I used on the guitar, so the background stays muted. Kraft cardstock is more porous and tends to soak up ink, which can mute or darken colors versus stamping on smooth white. So I'm loading up the rose stamp and pressing it twice in the same area with my Misty tool so the ink sinks into the cardstock. I know the color is going to lighten up as it dries, so I give it a second stamp so it evens out any light patches and gives me a solid image. Now I'm lining that stamp up again, this time in the top left corner, layering it on top of the stenciled pattern, mirroring the bottom right corner. I was at my grandson's school concert last week where he plays the bells and the triangle, and he's really good on the drums. It's so fun watching him use his gifts. He also jumps in on the church praise team when the praise team drummer can't be there and they need a drummer. My son-in-law is the worship pastor. He sings, plays guitar, drums, and some piano. My daughter's the church administrative assistant. She runs media, handles photography, and she'll step in on the praise team when they need somebody to play the guitar. Multi-talented doesn't even cover it. This card feels extra special because music is kind of their family love language. Now I'm pulling out that little splatter stamp that comes in the set. I'm stamping that in various places, but I only end up stamping in 3 spots because the last time I used this I went too far and I don't want to do that again. And I was thinking that was enough because I'm going to cut this panel down, and later if I need to add more I can always do that. Isn't that so fun? I really like that controlled splatter. I could have kept going and adding more, but I knew I was going to cover most of this up. Here I've cut down the panel and I'm popping it up with Scotch foam tape on a black matting layer. I'm not an artist and I'm not real sure of myself when it comes to this kind of stuff. That's why I was so happy when I saw that Tim Holtz sold these kind of mixed media stencils and stamp sets. And they're not that expensive. Look how beautiful that is. I could probably place a sentiment on this panel and use it as is, but I'm not going to do that. After adding that to the matting layer, I decided I needed to add some ink to the edges of the panel to draw the eye in. That really pulls everything together and really adds to the vintage feel. I'm using a finger dauber here because they are the best tools for the technique that I'm using. I probably should have done this before I put it on the foam tape, but until I attached it to the black matting layer, it didn't come to me. By the way, I'm using Warm Cocoa ink by Gina K Designs, and I think it turns out really well. See how when I put it up against the black mat, how it adds a little separation between the black mat and the vintage piece? Now it's time to attach that music sheet. I found a pack of these on Amazon. I keep adding vintage elements to this panel. I crinkled up the music sheet and I want to pop it up. I didn't want to add foam tape to it because that would straighten it out too much. Same thing with glue. I didn't want to add glue because it would get it wet and risk tearing or flattening that sheet. So I randomly added dimensional square foams to pop it up, as you can see here. Now I decided to add ink to the edge of the music sheet to go along with the look and feel. Even though it looked burnt already, I wanted to add some ink. I like ink on everything. I scored a 5x7 card base using rusted 125-pound cardstock. I really like a really thick card base and I don't want my cards to be flimsy. It's time to adhere those panels to the card base. Now, you can see my guitar is still almost larger than the 5x7, but I did get it to fit. It's almost bigger than the card itself, but it still worked out. Now I'm adding the guitar and that makes a finished card. I'll add the sentiment later when I'm ready to give it to my daughter. By the way, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I added glossy accents to the decorative piece and to the dots where the tuner pegs are. Off camera, I added the Happy Birthday Daughter You Rock sentiment from the Family Musical Mix Greeting set that's part of this collection. Then I finish it with splatter, picket fence for bright specks, vintage photo and frayed burlap for warm specks. And here's the finished card. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please hit like so YouTube shows it to more crafters, and subscribe so you never miss a video, and tap the bell so you get notified next time I put one out. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.